very strange. But ordinary is just what you're used to.
My name is Alfred, and I intend to survive.
That's a scene from the new TV series starring Mad Men's Elizabeth Moss. The Handmaid's Tale was written by Canadian novelist Margaret Atwood in 1985, and this recent adaptation was shot in Toronto. But the dystopian story is resonating now, especially in the United States. CBC's Yelena Adzik is here with more on that. So why do you think the story has resonance now?
You know, it's interesting, Natasha, because with reproductive rights of women being challenged in the United States, it is noteworthy that this book by Margaret Atwood, A Handmaid's Tale, has jumped back onto the bestseller list to top the bestseller list. So it is one of those that people are watching because it happened after Trump took power. The story itself, for people who aren't familiar, perhaps, it has to do with the idea that women would have their rights taken away from them and would be used merely as vessels, as shells that would help to procreate, but don't have any rights in and of themselves as women as they did in the past. So there you see CBC in the background. There were a lot of scenes here that were all shot in and around Toronto, but it is very much an American production with American actress Elizabeth Moss at the helm there. So it's curious, you know, when you think of a woman like Margaret Atwood, what a strong author in so many ways. How much was she involved? Well, she said she served as a consultant, and she sort of giggled or just said in jest that you know what that means. It means that they didn't have to really follow anything that she says, but she says ultimately she was pleased that they did stick to the core of the story. She says, quote, "However, the people making this were absolutely determined to keep the core ideas and not go off into some sort of sexploitation film." So she gives them props for that. In the meantime, when you talk about the timing of all of this, she wrote the book. It published in 85, wrote it in 84, and she says that was, remember, before there were cell phones or internet or easily accessible personal computers for that matter. And she was writing this on, she says, this German manual typewriter in East Germany, so in West Berlin rather. So she just feels that it's an incredible story that now people are grasping onto once again. Have a listen.
Did I have any idea that we would be at this moment here and now? No. But I did have an idea that that is always a potential, because if things get too scary and chaotic, people will sacrifice their civil liberties for some promise of safety.
We hear that theme so often about privacy versus security, and there's a lot of other themes that come up in that novel, but does this new adaptation live up to the novel?
Well, you know, as we were saying earlier, Margaret Atwood does feel that they stuck to the core of it, but a lot of people would say it's not entirely sticking to the novel because, of course, it spans over 10 episodes, so they have a lot more room, you could argue, to flesh out some of the characters and take the story into different and interesting directions. By the way, in Canada, we'll get the first 2 episodes tomorrow. That's on Bravo. And in the meantime, Elizabeth Moss had a chance to share some of her thoughts on this after the fact that she came under fire in a lot of social media circles saying, oh, this isn't really a feminist book, it's more of a humanist book, and I don't really look at it that way. Well, Margaret Atwood issued some terse comments on Twitter to say, my intention was to make it a feminist book, and now we hear this from Elizabeth Moss.
It is. 120% is a feminist book and a feminist show. I think it's also other things as well, on top of that, as Margaret Atwood also says. But it absolutely is.
I think Margaret Atwood has more influence than she's letting on. Definitely, people are sticking to it. The original story, it'll be great to see what people think once they actually see the TV version.
Okay, we'll be watching. Thank you, Yelena.
See you soon.